Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity.
Now, this clip implies that he's telling Americans to move out of America if they can't afford it. But that's not what he's saying at all. In fact, a lot of big accounts thought that he was saying leave America. He was specifically talking about New York and how Zoran Mamdani has made housing unaffordable there. He was saying move to a red state if you can't afford New York. Now, I don't think these accounts intentionally took it out of context. I think they were just mistaken. But that point would still be valid if we were talking about New York. So I'm going to show you the entire clip and then break down what I think he meant when he was saying this. Because I don't think he meant that it's a good thing that Americans can't afford housing. Anyway, let's have a look at the clip in its entirety.
I broadly, generally speaking, as a matter of principle, agree with you. But I mean, I was looking around at property prices, real estate prices in New York. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I feel kind of poor looking at those things.
Oh, no, it's unaffordable. And I'm not saying it's not affordable.
Right.
It absolutely is unaffordable. And if you wanted to make a political difference, what you would do is you would relieve the building regulations. You would make it easier for people to build, not harder. You wouldn't rent control, because if you stop rent controlling, then that creates incentive for people to build. You would allow people to build up further. You would get rid of many of the code regulations that are kind of antiquated. Like there are things you actually could do. And then if you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Okay? I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. Again, that's not saying that public policy can't change. I think it can, but I think that the solutions being offered are untenable.
So for those who think it's wrong for him to tell New Yorkers to move, bear in mind, he's not saying it's a good thing that they need to move. If you want to be charitable, I think what he's saying is that young people should move from a practical standpoint for them. His point was to tell people how to deal with a bad situation. He wasn't telling people that the bad situation they're in is a good thing. He wasn't saying that it's a good thing that they're forced to leave the place that they grew up in. He wasn't saying that it's a good thing that housing is unaffordable. He was just making a practical point about how you're not entitled to anything in life. If everyone around you has abandoned the same principles that you had, you need to get away from them. If the people in your state have voted to ruin it, you need to get out rather than be dragged down by them. So he's not saying that it's an ideal scenario that you need to leave the place that you grew up in. He's just pointing out the reality of the current situation. This is exactly how Charlie caught flack for saying, you're not going to get gun crimes to zero. It will not happen. Now, Charlie wasn't saying that gun crime is a good thing. He was just pointing out the reality of the situation. And Ben even suggests ways to make housing more affordable. So he wasn't saying that housing being unaffordable is a good thing. And he wasn't even saying that young people don't deserve affordable housing. He was just talking about how Zoran Mamdani will probably ruin New York with his policies. And this clip was in the first 5 minutes of the podcast. And Ben was specifically asked about Zoran Mamdani and his policies for New York.
I think that the success of the Mamdani administration relies on him not being able to do anything that he says he's going to do. If those things happen that he wants to happen, he's going to empty out the city. It'll destroy the city. If he doesn't get those things, then it'll be really pleasant for him politically. He'll be able to blame the system for not being able to get done what he wants to get done. So the problems will stay the problems, but he'll just rail against the city. He'll be a perennial outsider, even as mayor.
So he wasn't talking about America in general. He was talking about how socialism would ruin New York and that if people wanted to deal with it, they would have to move or vote Zoran out. And I'm sure Ben would prefer the latter. But he was saying that in the case that we can't vote Zoran out, then you need to be sensible and do what's best for yourself and move. Now, I actually agree with his detractors more than I do with him nowadays. People like Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes, they make better points nowadays than the traditional 2010s conservative right like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Matt Walsh. But taking someone out of context, even the slightest bit, is not right because that's exactly what the left does. This is how the left spread the hoax about Trump calling neo-Nazis very fine people. They took him out of context and attacked the out-of-context clips instead of what he actually meant. And it seems like Ben was extremely uncharitable to the likes of Nick Fuentes when he was starting out, and Ben would be wrong for that. But as a principle, you can't be attacking people when they're taken out of context, especially when you have so many legitimate reasons to disagree with them, like on foreign policy or immigration or other important issues. So I like hearing criticism of Ben Shapiro by the New Right. I just don't want it to be done in this fashion, because this is what the left does. They take someone out of context and attack that rather than attacking their actual positions. And I actually have a video of the left doing that to Trump again lately, which I'm going to link. Anyway, that's it for today. If you like this video, consider subscribing to catch the next one.